Hi guys, Samantha from My Tutorials here, and today I'll be showing you how to make these pendants and how to string them. So the first part of this tutorial is going to be how to create the tiger eye needed on the one side of the pendant. And so you're going to be needing all of these colours over here. So starting from number 1, so I'm just going to show you. That's number 1. Number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11, and then this is just plain Primo translucent. So it's quite a lot of colours, but that is what is needed for this tutorial. Colours are the most important things when creating faux techniques, and so that is what we are going to be using. So here's a piece of tiger eye that I created a while back. Ours is going to look a little different. I made a little mistake here where I streaked it a little bit too much, but we're going to be making something very similar to this. So you're going to take each of your colours. So I'm going to start with colour number 1, and you're just going to form it into a long snake, and you want these to be very thin. The thinner the better, because tiger eye has lots of little stripes in it. So if I bring this over again, you can see that I have a lot of variation in my stripes. Some of these over here are a little bit thin, over here is a bit thicker. So have a bit of variety in your stripes, but just make sure that they're not too thick, because if they're too thick it won't look real. So then I'm going to take some of the black, and really it doesn't matter which ones you put together, so there's no particular science to this bit, just you want to be putting similar colours with similar colours. That's all. You don't want to have a huge jump from black to gold as too often. So some of these snakes are going to be a little too long, so I'll just trim that up later on. And remember to put your translucent in as well. And we're going to be doing like a semi-skinner blend with this, and I'll show you that in a little while, so that these layers kind of blend together almost. That will also create a great effect. So I'll just carry on popping this together, and so I'll put it all together and then I'll explain to you which colours are which. Okay, so here we are. I've popped all the pieces together, and it's a whole jumble of colours, so I've used basically every single colour that we mixed. So I'll just pop that lengthwise for you. And so there's some science to this madness, I guess. There are darker areas and there are lighter areas, and then there are darker areas and then there are lighter areas. So you do want to have some form of pattern, but you don't really have to do much. So there's basically just a mix of colours. Pop the colours together the way you would like them to. Just make sure that you try to keep the darks with the darks and the lights with the lights, and only occasionally intermingle them. So now what I'm doing is I'm just trying to straighten up these stripes, because we're now going to do a semi-skinner blend, and so I want them fairly straight. And then I go bring over my acrylic roller and flatten it out. So it looks pretty nice already, but it doesn't really look like tiger eye. And now I'm going to be doing this whole skinner blend thing by hand. So I'm going to bring over my tissue blade, pick that up and fold it over, and I'm going to try and keep all the colours in their individual lanes. There's going to be some crossover, and that's what you want, but you want to try and keep it from wandering right off to the side, if you know what I mean. And then I'm going to just run that through the pasta machine on the thickest setting, like that. And then I'm going to fold again. I'm going to try and keep everything in its individual lane like last time. Okay. And I'll run that through the pasta machine again. And you always want to run it through from this side to this side. You never want to run it through from this side to this side. Always lengthen the stripes. Okay. I'm just checking both sides, and we'll want to do it again. I want to get it so that it's just slightly blended. And I'll run it through again. Okay, we'll probably go one more time. Yeah, that's enough. One more time. Okay, there we are. So you can see that the colours are just starting to overlap. You just want that start. You don't want to go any further, otherwise you'll run into problems. Don't go too far with the blend. So just blend it until you can just start to see the colours merging together. Don't go any further. Then you want to bring over some sort of tool, and a needle tool. So I've got a piercing pin, and then I've got another piercing pin. So you can use a needle and a piercing pin, maybe a knitting needle, but you want the point to be quite thin. So this one's point is thinner than this one's point, but you want both points to be thin, so a skewer won't work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this through the pasta machine from this end to this end, and I'm going to be bringing it down from my thickest setting down to my middle setting. And again, I'm lengthening the stripes. There. So that's what it looks like, because I don't want to be running it through the pasta machine after this too much. Then I'll bring over my piercing pin. I'm just going to get this nice and flat on the tile. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be streaking across. And what this will do is it will encourage the mica, the clay, to smudge into the other areas. There's lots of techniques using this effect. It can be used on non-metallic clays. It's actually a really good leftover technique. I might do a video on it for the leftover techniques, but it works really well for faux stones as well. So I'm just going slowly. I want them all to be in generally the same direction. You don't want to be going this way or this way or this way, but you want to be trying to keep it going in the same direction. But if it's not completely straight, that's perfectly fine. That's actually to a certain degree better, because you do want it to be a little bit random. And now another thing is you don't have to go across the entire sheet. You can go the entire way, or you can just go in individual areas that you think need to have a few more lines in them. And don't go too deep either. You just want to be doing the surface, because remember, we want to flatten this out. So if you're going too deep and gouging straight into it, it's going to be really hard to get that out. So just try to go shallow as you can and get the effect. And so you can see that I'm doing a lot, and so it's starting to look like tiger eye. And I'll just carry on doing this until I'm happy with the number of lines. And now I always go in the same direction as well. I found that, well, we're going to go in the other direction in a little while, but I like to go in one direction first, and then I'll come back and go in the next direction. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to bring over my tissue blade, pick this up, rotate, and then I'm going to start going in the other direction. And I'll just carry on doing this basically, and I'll also bring over the other pin that I showed you, and I'll do some thinner lines. So this is basically as thick a point as you want. You don't want to be going any thicker than this, otherwise you'll get smudges instead of streaks. So don't go any thicker. And this should create your tiger eye effect. You want to get a lot of it. So this is very busy at the moment, so it's very tempting to stop right now, but you want to do it a lot, because that's what's going to create that really cool streaked tiger eye effect. So I'll carry on doing this and I'll come back and show you what it looks like before we roll it flat. Okay, so here's what it looks like. Now what we want to do is we want to roll this way, or this way, any way will work. So I'll first roll this way just to get it started, but we also want to roll the other way. So there we are. Pick this up, and depending on what colours you use, your tiger eye is going to look a little different. So if you include more black, or you include more yellow, or gold, or copper, it's going to look a little different. So maybe have a look at some tiger eye pictures online and decide which one you like. The more, it's going to look different. So maybe you like the ones that contain more gold, maybe you like the ones that contain more black, maybe you like the ones with the thinner lines, maybe you like the ones with the thicker lines. It really is a very versatile technique. So this is just a basic overall tiger eye, but with these colors there's a wide range of them, so you can create some other different variations on this tiger eye. You can make a more gold one, maybe leave out some of the browns and just maybe take in some of the golds and the darker browns and the black. You always need the black and the translucent. That's definitely something that you do always need. But you can take out most of the browns, or you can take out most of the golds, and it should still look somewhat like tiger eye. Though I found that this combination I've used here, where I've used all of the colours, looks best. But play with it and see what you like. I've got a whole bunch of colours left, so I'll probably play around with them and see what I can make. And you should too. It's fun. Okay. So it's looking great at the moment. I'm very happy with how it is. This is why you need mica clay for this, because you create a mica shift using those scratches. So maybe you could use this mica shift later on, as it's got nothing to do with tiger eye. Maybe you just wanted to make a mica shift like this, because you could create a really cool mica shift. So I know that I look like I'm overkilling the rolling, but it's very hard for the camera to pick up, but I can still see that these streaks aren't completely flat, and they need to be completely flat. I really like this area over here. This area is probably the best area, and I also kind of like over here, but this area looks the best. Okay, so I've just got a little area over there and some areas over here, so I'll just spend some more time rolling it flat. Okay, so now it is flat. I'll just brighten this up a bit for you to see better. So I'll just bring over my tissue blade and gently pick this up. And here's what it looks like. Really happy with that. It looks, oh, you've gone blurry. There, I'll just wait. It looks really nice. So if I shift this around, you can see some of the streaks still, so you can spend a bit more time rolling it flat, but I'm going to be using this with resin, so it doesn't matter if you can still see the streaks a little bit. Here's what this side looks like, so you can see what a stark difference those streaks make. It really does make the technique. And if you wanted to use this double side, you'd just go and streak this side as well, and then you'd have a double-sided tiger eye, and that would work just fine. Okay, so I've just got a little bit there that got stuck, so I'll bring over my blade and just get rid of that. There. Okay, so that's the first bit done. Now we want to move on to the crackle. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the second part of the tutorial, and for this we are going to need gold clay. And this is just gold primo rolled out on the thickest setting of the pasta machine. And you're also going to need a heat gun. Now, an embossing heat gun will work, but I've got this industrial heat gun since it's better. It has 2 settings, and so I can control the heat a bit better, and I can make it more aggressive and less aggressive. So I'm just going to go to setting 2. And now, quick thing, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, but when doing a heat gun at home, your clay will have a shiny effect to it. And when it bakes, it will actually turn matte. So as you're heat gunning, keep an eye on your clay, and as it as it turns matte, move your heat gun away until your entire piece of clay has turned matte. Switch off your heat gun, let it cool for a little while, and then check how hard it is. I'll talk more about it in a minute, but right now I just want to make you watch for that matte look. So I'm going to switch this on and mind the noise. There you go. I really hope the camera picked that up, but it has gone matte. So another way to figure if your clay, at least the top surface, is baked, you can run your finger over the top, and if you can run it really quickly, then it is baked. If your hand sticks, it is not baked. So that's a quick thing. Let me just pick this up, and it is baked. So I just want to give you a look of that, see what it looks like. Then I'll flip. And can you see how much shinier this side is? This is the side that's not baked. This is the side that is baked. So you want to be looking for that difference at home. Now, another thing is, when you're doing a heat gun, turn it matte, switch off your heat gun. You don't want to, once it's turned matte, you want to switch off the heat gun, otherwise you're at risk of going too far. So once you switched off, let it cool for at least 30 seconds, because when the clay is hot, it will appear soft, and so you'll think that you have underbaked it and you need to bake it more. Let it cool for 30 seconds, and that means that the clay will harden up to what it actually is baked to. Then use your finger to gently press on the clay, and you'll get a feel for this. But this one's properly baked, so I did a very quick heat gunning with it. Any more would have actually baked it too far, and you wouldn't be able to get a crackle for it. So just make sure that you go over once until it's matte, switch off the heat gun, then let cool for 30 seconds, and then check its consistency. Otherwise you can get a false impression. So now this is done, so you can see that it's starting to crack. I might even have overdone this a little bit. So we'll see. No, I think that's fine. Okay, so just checked it with my roller quickly. Now I'm going to pick that up, and now I'm going to run it through a pasta machine from this side to this side on the thickest setting. And this is what I have got. I'm again going to go down to, now my thickest setting is on the number 7. I'm going to go down to my next setting, which is a number 6, and I'm going to roll it through the exact same way. Okay, and I've just got this area that I'm going to just hand crack, and I'll want them going in one direction for the first part. So it's really pretty, really happy with that. Then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to run it through from this side to this side, and I'm going to go one setting down to my number 5. There we are. And that's it. You don't want to go too far. And if you have lift ups, just tap them down. And I'll just maybe roll over with my acrylic rod just to make sure that it's all nicely stuck down. And that is all you want to do. And that's basically the basics of Crackle. I have another tutorial called I think it was my Love Crackle tutorial. I provide a link to it. If you're watching this on Patreon, you'll be able to see it in the backlog. If you're on Etsy, I'll just provide the Etsy link to it. But I also talk about Crackle in that one, and I show bits of different techniques using the Crackle. And also, I've also shown a tropical island donut necklace where I also use this technique in there. There's many ways of doing this, so they're not the exact same type of Crackle, but it's again a Crackle technique. So if you like Crackle, I'll provide a link to that. And if you are watching this on Patreon, again, you will be able to see that in the backlog, so go check that out if you're on Patreon. But if you're on Etsy, you will have to purchase it. So I'll just gently lift this up, so you can see how nice and organic that is. And I'll just bring over my tiger eye and see the two match pretty well. I do want to put some alcohol inks on here just to kind of bring out a little bit of colour difference, because it's all the same colour at the moment. So I'll bring over those alcohol inks. Okay, so I've got the alcohol inks, and I just want to move this over a little on the tile. And now just another thing that I forgot to mention before is, depending on how long you hold the heat gun to your clay depends on how much it's baked, which is obvious I guess, but that can also affect the type of crackle you get. So the longer you hold it, the larger your crackle's going to be. So over here I held it a little bit too long, or a little bit longer. I'm happy with the crackle. And so you can see the crackle's larger, but over here I went a little quicker, and so there was less heat, and so the crackle is therefore smaller. So you can vary your crackle size by just varying how long you hold your heat gun. And this all takes practice. So if you're starting this if this is your first time, I recommend getting a bunch of leftover clay that's useless for anything else, and practice your heat gun, practice your crackle with that first, because I ended up wasting a lot of good clay because I didn't practice on leftovers. So we are going to start with Sunshine Yellow, and this is a rondac. I'll just pop that into areas and smudge it with my finger. And I don't want a lot of colour variation, I just want it so that there's just a light shading. And this is optional. If you don't have a bunch of alcohol inks, don't sweat. You can just you could use mica powders if you wanted, I guess. It wouldn't really stick that well, but you could use mica powders before you crackle it. But you don't have to do the shading if you don't want to. It works just fine like this. Especially with the mica clay, because the stuff coming out of the cracks is darker because of how the mica particles react. Well, not react, how the mica particles are. I explain that more in my mica article. I'll provide a link to that. Then I'm going to move over onto Ginger. And this is the same brand as before, so that's what it looks like. Okay, just dab a little on my brush. Again, I'm just going to give it a quick rub. Might just leave it there for a little while to sink in and just give it a light rub. Don't want to be rubbing it away, which is what I did the first time. But I just want to be smoothing it out so that it has a very light impact. I'm very happy with how this looks, it's quite nice. Now you want to be using similar colours to what you used in the tiger eye, because the two are supposed to match. So I'm using very yellowy colours because that's the colours that I want to bring out. If you wanted to bring out the reds, then you'd use more red alcohol inks. These are the two that I'm going to use. I'm quite happy with the shading now. Just a little bit of a variation in colour. But we don't want to overdo it. So I'm pretty happy with that. And because we use so little, it's pretty much dry already. And here's the tiger eye. And so that's the first part of our tutorial. Well, no, the second part actually. Now what we need to do, if you can see it over here, we need to make this little polka dot translucent cane. So that will be in the next part. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the translucent polka dot cane. So what we're going to need for this is some white, and this is all Primo and Primo translucent. Now, this Primo was rolled out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine, and this white has around a 1/2 centimeter diameter. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that white onto the translucent, and I am going to wrap. And I'm going to see if I can go twice. Yeah, that actually will meet it perfectly for twice. Yeah. And don't worry if it cracks, and you don't need a perfect border either, so I've wrapped it about twice there. So now I'm just going to squish it all together and roll so that it smooths out those cracks and things. Now we've got an air bubble here, so I'm going to try and smooth that out because we don't want air bubbles. And I'll trim off these ends so you can see there's a little polka dot in there. And I'm going to trim that in too. and then I'm going to roll towards the ends to try and smooth out air away from the middle. This Primo's a little bit old, so it's a little bit, it's cracking a bit. So I'll chop it over there to show you. So you can see there it's cracking. So I like to, if that happens, I like to chop it where the problem is and then squish out the air so that it fixes up the problem. There we are. And so we want to reduce this, and it doesn't matter how far you reduce it, it really will look pretty much the same. Just reduce it so that you have enough pieces that you can form a kind of nautilus-like polka dot cane. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. You do want them all to be reduced to about the same diameter though. So let's check that. Yeah. Okay, and then I'm just going to chop off the ends. That's what it looks like at the moment. Then I'll pop this together and I'll start cutting segments. And the great thing about this cane is that the white will stay white, but the translucent, once you put it over your bead, it's going to go translucent, so you'll be able to see the effects underneath. And so that's what's great about these translucent canes. And translucent canes are so simple, they're really easy to use. If you're watching this on Patreon and are part of my Patreon membership, I show a few translucent canes in some of my previous tutorials. One of them was my cherry blossom necklace. That one I showed a translucent flower. And then another one is my beach bead, my beach necklace. In there I show a translucent rose. And I also show a translucent coral cane. So you can see that I use translucent canes a lot. So if you're on Patreon, you should be able to access that backlog. So be sure to check that out. But if you are watching this on YouTube, not YouTube, on Etsy, then you are going to have to purchase each of those tutorials separately. But you can access the backlog if you are a Patreon member, which is what's great about Patreon. You only have to pay a fee once a month, but you can access all the previous backlog. There we are. So I'll stop talking, and now we can move on to sorting these out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop them all in a line next to each other, just like this, and we're basically going to roll this up kind of like a jelly roll. And you don't have to do this, you can put them together kind of like a lace cane so that you have them all over the place, but I kind of like that we are going to organize it, because then it will look, I like the look better in my opinion. So I'll just continue laying these out. Okay, then I'll gently start to roll it, and you don't have to worry too much about this, you just want to get it rolling. And it kind of gets easier generally as you roll. Just a little hard because these aren't all stuck together, kind of like a jelly roll, so it's not all in one sheet. So there we are, we rolled it up kind of like a jelly roll. Now I'm just going to squish it flat so that they're all the same size, just like that. And then we will have to reduce it into a round. So I like to take my fingers like that, and then my other fingers like that, squish, rotate, and do the up and down the cane. And that helps me reduce just fine. And now it's going to move a little slowly in the beginning, but it will start to move faster as you go down. There we go. And then I'll roll it against my tile every now and then, and I might stretch it a little bit. So in the beginning I like to use that pincer motion that I showed you, but now I like to roll it against my tile and then kind of stretch it, roll against the tile again, and then pull on it. Now I'm just going to trim up these edges. I'm not going to worry too much if this end isn't completely right, so you can see that we've got a little bit of distortion there, but that's fine. I'm not going to worry too much about that. Now I want to reduce this down quite a bit, probably to about 1/2 centimeter diameter, so 5mm diameter, and that should be perfectly good. But again, I'm not too worried about it. It doesn't have to be the exact right size. There you are, so you can see that it's looking like little polka dots. So just need to reduce it a tiny bit more. Chop off that section again, and keep all of these leftovers. I have a whole bunch of leftover techniques on my website jessimotutorials.com, so be sure to check those out, as I've got a bunch of leftover techniques and it should help a lot with using up your leftovers. Okay, so there we are, and that's basically it for all of the bits that we need to make for our bead. So now we can start assembling our bead. So I'll bring over all the bits. So here's our tiger eye and our cane and our crackle. So those all go together quite nicely. Now I need to roll out a sheet of black for the back. Okay, so I've rolled out the piece of black, and now just before I bring it over, I just want to address something. These two need to go together, so they need to be the same height more or less. So this one was rolled out on the 5th setting of my pasta machine. This one was rolled out on the 3rd setting of my pasta machine, which is the 3rd thinnest setting. So I need to roll out a piece of black on the 2nd thinnest setting, place this on top of that black sheet, and then it will be about the same height as this. So that is what I have done. So I'll just move this out the way, and I'll bring over that black. There we are. We'll bring this over. There we are. And I'll just smooth it down, getting out as many air bubbles as possible, because we don't want air bubbles. So just smoothing, and this will bring it up to about the same height. Then I'll bring over my blade, and I will trim up. And I'll show you that it's basically the exact same height. And this is important if you're putting two sheets together. So this is a technique that is applied to basically whenever you're putting two sheets together. So this is a good thing to remember. It just makes the entire thing look better, and it makes the process easier in the long run too. So pick that up, move this out the way, then bring over the crackle. And now I've got a flat edge over here and a flat edge there. So if I place that next to each other, hopefully you can see it's about the same height. It's not quite the same height, but it's close enough that's okay. So now what we're going to do is I'm gonna cut this crackle in half, and I'm gonna cut off a section over here. Just like this. I'll lay the crackle down because that will be easier. Then we'll place this next to it, and then I'll bring over my roller and I will roll just to make sure that's flat. So it's not completely flat, but it's okay. I'll just feel the join there. And that brings those two pieces together. Okay. And whoops, I'm using my ruler there. And I'll just trim up here the pieces that we don't need. And I'll trim over there as well. And there's our piece that we're going to be working with. So here's the back, and we'll fix up the back in a little while once we've packed up the bead, once we've made the bead. But for now, this crackle is leaking baked bits of gold everywhere. So for now, I'll put that to the side, and we'll bring over our little polka dot cane, and I'm just going to cut off a little bit so it makes it easier for me to work with. And now, when you're cutting at home, cut it where you can see it. So I'm cutting at an angle that's most comfortable for me. I'm just going to cut these slices, and be careful of your fingers. I'm keeping my fingers there as a guide for my blade to prevent it from going too far over, so that my slices are more even. But be careful, because you can cut yourself. I haven't cut myself ever, but I think that's probably a stroke of luck in some cases. So I'll just move this up to where it needs to go. We're going to start over here, and this is going to cover our seam. You can keep the seam if you want, you don't have to put the translucent canes there, but I just find that it tidies it up for some reason. It covers that seam, because the thing is, the seam is a semi-straight line, so if it was wiggly and it was winding all over the place, then I'd want to keep it. But because it's semi-straight, it's going to look off. It needs to be completely straight if I want to keep it there, otherwise it will look off. So I am covering it with these translucent canes so that we don't have to worry about it not being completely straight. The translucent canes will pretty much hide that. And that's what I use most of my translucent canes for. I use them a lot to cover up the seams where I have two pieces of polymer clay meet, and I just found that that's a great thing to do. Doesn't have to be a translucent cane, you could use any cane that you wanted. You could even use a piece of another sheet if you wanted to. There we go. Now I'm going to bring over my roller again, and I'm going to roll one way and roll the other way. This will prevent distortion, because we want that nice and flat and embedded properly, otherwise it will look strange. So just make sure that you embed it properly. Yeah, so we'll almost embed it. This side's going to be a little harder for it to embed because the clay is partially baked already, but you want it to be a nice smooth line on the opposite side with the tiger eye. There we are. So I'm feeling over this, and I can't feel the seam, so that's good. So that's the sheet that we are going to be taking from. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over our bead template that we're going to be using. Now I'll just show the template, or the bead. This is the shape bead that we're going to be making. Now I have provided a template, so if you're watching this on Etsy, it came in that PDF. Oh, not PDF, it came in that file that came with your tutorial, so check that out. And if you're watching this on Patreon, I have a separate post that provides a downloadable image, and I have instructions there, so be sure to check that out. So I'll bring over the template, and so here is my template. And so the original template was like this, but then when I cut out my bead, I wanted to give it a kind of natural look, so I freehand cut this bit. Your template will look like this, but I like to freehand cut it so it looks nice. Now, I'm going to debate whether I want it this way around or this way around. I think I'm going to do it this way around like I did on the bead. It looks best that way. Okay. There we are. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this section so that I don't accidentally ruin it. And I'm going to cut along here. There we go, and take that away so that I don't accidentally cut it. And here, and I'll also take that away. Then bend my blade and cut up here. Okay. Need to tend this just a little bit more. The template's harder to use than a cutter. There we are. There we are, so that's what it looks like. Now what we're going to do is we're going to free form cut it. So I'm going to mark off that I want to cut there, and I want to cut here. So cut that there, and cut that there. So if I bring this over and flip, that's pretty close. Then I'll bring over around and I'll cut in the middle. Now don't worry, I like to fuss with this and give it a freehand interesting look. Don't worry, you'll have set templates so you don't have to worry about messing with it. Now I'm just going to use my blade to gently work this out. And that's what it looks like. Gently lift that up. Okay, and I'm going to analyze it from each side. And I'm pretty happy with it. Now we're going to bring over another sheet of black to pop this on. And this was rolled out on the second thinnest setting of my pasta machine. And I'll just bring this over and place it on top. And I've got a little bit of something stuck over there. I'm just going to gently pick that up. Okay, and I'm just going to gently burnish it so that it sticks properly. And I'm going to trim. And I'm going to trim. Gonna trim again and trim again. There we are. Just checking the edges to make sure I'm all happy. This part is the most important part, so spend enough time on it making sure that you're happy with everything. Then I'll bring over my cutter again and I'll press and I'm going to rotate just to make sure that it's round. And then I'm going to bring over a pick. And this is just a piercing pin. Will help me lift this out, hopefully. There we are. And there, it's nice and clean. Now we do want to tend to the back with some texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat gun the front to prevent it from distorting. So before we do that, just want to go with our finger smooth just to make sure that we've got as many fingerprints as possible. But now we can heat gun. So here's my heat gun. I showed you that before. I'm going to switch it on. It's going to make a little bit of noise. There we are, so we did a bit of baking there, just to make sure that the front is now nice and hot. Now you want to let that cool before you fuss with it, otherwise you can encounter a few problems. So I'm going to let that cool and then we can texture the back and things like that. So it's cooled down just a bit. Now I'm going to bring over my blade and very carefully lift this up because the back is still raw, which is the entire point of this. But you can see that it's not distorting. I can flip it around and not worry. Now I'm going to bring over my logo. If you have a logo, this is the time to imprint. So I'll just bring this over and get it all measured up. So I'm just going to do that off to the side here for a minute. Sorry, I'm off camera. Okay. And I'm just gently gonna press. Gently lift it out as well. There we are. Just tap that down. I'm looking into making my own logo cane so that it works better. And now we're going to bring over our texture. So this is just a bit of foam that I have. You can buy the dishwashing sponges, that will work very well. I'm just gently going to press in here. This is going to texture the back nicely for me. And just make sure that you spend enough time getting that texture in properly, because it's going to look like it's got a lot more texture than it actually has when it is raw, because you're going to get that shine from the clay. So just make sure that you texture it more than you want, I guess. So I've got a lot of texture down there. I'm going to see if I can texture it a bit more here. Now, just a note with the heat gun, you do need to be careful not to overdo it, because you can accidentally heat the back. So around the edges over here, I've heat gunned it a little bit too much, so the back's baked just a little bit. Not too much, but it has baked a little bit. So now we are going to heat gun it again. There you go. I was just switching to different settings because it blows a little bit harder, and so this slides around the work surface. But the reason I wanted to heat gun the back now is because I can touch it now and not worry about it distorting or anything while I'm taking it over to bake. So here's the front, and it's going to look so much better when we have resin. And here's the back, all nice and finished off. Now, this tiger eye that we have here is fairly light, and that's just because of the area that we took it out. So if I bring it over here, this is the area that we took it out of, so that's a fairly light area. I'm going to go and make a few more beads, and I'm going to take out of different areas so that we get different looks of tiger eye. So depending on where you cut it out, you're going to get a different look. But what you would do basically after you've made the bead is you would take that and you will bake it for a half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and then we'll take it out, and then I'll show you how to fix up these edges. Because although they look okay at the moment, we want that to be a bit nicer. I want to make that one pure colour, because you can see that we have cracks and things, so that needs to be fixed up. So I'll go pop that in the oven, and then I'll show you how to finish up the front of this. So they're out of the oven. I've done the other ones, so they're all finished off. So I'm going to just show you this one for the moment, for the sanding and the smearing. So what you're going to need is a piece of black clay. You're going to want to warm it up in your hands. Now just a quick note, I put this in at Primo's recommended temperature for 45 minutes. So I'm not sure if I mentioned that before or not. So anyway, you have a piece of black clay, stick it to the edge just like that, and then just simply start smearing. And there you can see that it's tidied up the edge nicely. And just make sure to go back and smooth it off all nice. Okay, and there's, so you can see a difference between that side and that side. Then all you do is just pick up all these little bits of crumble, which you will get, roll it back into a sausage, start again on the other side and smear. And there we are, that side's just as nice. Now when you're smearing, make sure that you're putting a good amount of pressure onto the clay, because you only want to leave, as the name suggests, a smear. Any more than that and it will look like it has a very untidy border around it, and that's not what you want. So just make sure that when you do this you're pressing hard enough. And if it flakes up like that, just take another piece of your black, stick it down in the problem area and smear again, and it should clean it up just fine. And always make sure to go back over with your fingers and just smooth it over, because you don't want fingerprints or anything like that, because you're not going to be able to sand very well, because it's such a thin layer of black. So just make sure that you do enough tidying up. So you can see it flaked there again, and it also didn't smear up here. Then you can manipulate it into place a little bit. Just make sure that you've covered up all your areas, because you don't want to have to go and do this again once you've baked this, because then it will look like a black untidy border around your edge, and you don't want that. So make sure that you get it first time round. Then go and make sure that it's nice and smooth before you put it in the oven again. And we're going to put this in the oven for another half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature. So there we are, that looks much better. Check for bulges. There's a little bulge over here that I need to just smooth out. And there we are. So now that's going to go in the oven for half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature. Okay, so we've finished the sides now, and it's all nice and finished. And so now we are ready to start sanding. So I'm going to bring over my polishing papers, which is what I like to use for sanding. And these I get off of Fine Mountain Gems, and so this is the thickest grit, or the lowest grit, which is a 400. And you'll just start sanding in a circular motion across the surface of your bead. And you'll go from the lowest grit, which in my case is a 400, all the way up to your highest grit, which if you are using the polishing papers will be an 8000. So they really give you a great buff. So you'll sand the front, the sides and the back. When sanding the back, just be careful not to remove too much of the texture, but you do want that to be a little bit more shiny than it is. So I'll just continue sanding in this circular motion through all of the grits until I am done, and then I'll come and show you how to resin them. Okay, so here they are all done and dusted. They're ready for us to start resining and other things. So first what we want to do is we want to pop some Renaissance wax on them. So we just want to pop them on the back, so exclude the dirty cloth, but this is the one that I use for resin and thing. Oh, excuse me, for the Renaissance wax, because it gets a little dirty. So you'll just open up the Renaissance wax, and that's what it looks like. Take a little bit onto your cloth, close it up, and now you only want this on the back and the sides. So just dab a light amount onto the back and onto the sides. And if you have a buffing wheel, you can use that to buff this, but you can also do it by hand. So there we are, all rubbed on. Now just give it a quick buff. You only want it on the back and the sides. So there we are, it's got nice, hopefully you can see it, that's got a nice sheen to it. And you'll do the same for all the others. Okay, so now that that's done, they have a nice shiny glossy black back. There we are, I can really see it there. There we are. So they all look like that, and their sides are also quite nice and shiny. So now we're ready to resin them. So I'm going to pop those off to the side while we do the resin. And I'm going to bring over my measuring cup, and we're going to be using ice resin today. So here's what it looks like. This is part A, which is the resin, and this is part B, which is the hardener. So we're going to start with the resin, because that's the part that flows the slowest, and so it's the easiest to start with that one first. And we're going to mix 2.5 mils. So I'll just try and keep this out of the way so you can see. Okay, and you want to go slowly, because you don't want to overpour. And actually, I think I'm going to go up to 5. I'll make this 5 mils, I think. Having a dilemma. Well, we'll see. If I accidentally overpour, then we'll go to 5 mils. Okay, just checking that that's meeting up on all of the sides, and then we'll let that settle. And I'm going to bring this up so that I can see where it is, and that's just on 2.5. Okay, and I've decided I'm going to go up to 5 mils because I've got some other beads that I want to resin. And the more resin you have, the easier it is to make sure that you get an accurate measurement. So I like to generally go as high as I can, but I don't like waste resin. So I went and had a check through, and I think I can have about 5 mils hardener and 5 mils resin. So I'm going up to 5 mils here. And I'm just busy waiting to see when it gets to that point. Okay. There we are. That's the resin. Now we're going to do the hardener, which flows a lot faster, as you will see in a minute. Okay, and that one I'm going to take up to the 10 mil mark. And don't pour too much at once because you can accidentally overpour. Okay, almost there. Okay, there you go. Now I'll bring over a skewer, which is what I like to mix with. And I'll just start mixing. And in the beginning it's going to cloud up quite a bit. Once your resin is fully mixed, it will be crystal clear. So I like to mix for about 3 to 5 minutes just to make sure that I have mixed it correctly, because even when you think you've gotten rid of all the streaks, there probably will be still some left. So you just want to make sure that you are fully mixing it. So I'll just carry on doing this for the next 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, so I finished mixing it up and I've let it rest for a few minutes. So it's gotten rid of most of the bubbles. Now excuse the horrible red colour, but this is the resining mat that we're going to be using, so I'm just going to turn this down for you. There you are. And this is what we're going to rest our beads on. So take one bead at a time, that one down, bring over our resin, take a little bit, and work in little bits at a time, because if you add too much it will run off the edges. So you just need to be careful how much you pop on. And don't break the surface tension either. Once the resin starts going over the edge, there's no stopping it. So hopefully you can see how nice and micry that is. Yeah, I'll bring this forward for you to see better. You'll see better when it's cured because it won't be on this horrible red background. There we are. That's all the resin we need for that one. So I'll put that off to the side and I'll carry on resining all of my other beads. Okay, so I finished up resining all of the beads and left them to cure for about 24 hours, and here's what they look like. So you can see that now the mica particles really shimmer and it looks really nice and shiny, and the resin gives a lovely glass dome. So that's great, and the backs look really nice as well, so they're all finished and ready to go. So I'm going to use the one that we originally made. The other two I will put on my Etsy shop as beads, but this one I'm going to show how to turn into a necklace. You're going to need 2 strands of suede, and I've chosen these colours, and I got these off of eBay if you were wondering, and so you want matching colours. Now depending on how much of each colour you use, so if you'd used less of the gold, you'd want some darker, more reddish colours. If you'd used more of the golds, you'd want more light colours. So you just want to make sure they all matches. And then I've trimmed these up to the right size that I want my necklace to be, which is about 16 inches, just a little bit longer than that. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we are going to grab one end, take it all the way down to the other end, so that it's folded in half. Then we're going to bring it all the way down till it forms two loops. We're going to feed those two loops through our hole in our bead, and then we are going to move the strands around so that we're happy with where they lie. Then bring these bits up. It's a little fiddly. Bring them up and through the loop. And then we want to pull. There we go. And that's what it looks like. So now we've got these two strands. So I'll separate them. And I'm just going to show you the one side. You'll finish off the other side just like you did this side. So I'll show you this side and then I'll do the same on the other side. You're going to need a cord end, which is one of these fold over pieces. And you're going to need some chain nose pliers to just gently fold over those rims onto the cord. Yeah, and these things look very ugly, but we're going to cover them up. So don't worry if they look too ugly, just make sure that they're nice and secure, like that. Okay, and I'll do the same on the other side in a minute. Then you're going to need some sort of cone. You're also going to need a head pin. I'm just bringing that over. Snip off the head of the head pin. Make a little loop. And I'm using antique copper today as well. There we go. Open up that loop. Thread that through the loop on your cord end and close it up. Thread on the cap and that should cover it up just fine. Okay, and then if this comes through the loop, which I'm going to try and get it to do, there we are. So I'll just pull that through and I'm going to unhook it. So if your this loop didn't come through the top of your bead cap, you could just link this through, close it up, and that would stay inside here, and then you'd make another loop and that's what you'd attach your clasp to. But if I can pull it through the loop like that, that's how I prefer to do it, because it's just more secure and there's less areas for weak links. So you'll open up a jump ring, put on half of your clasp, thread the jump ring through the loop, close off the jump ring, and there you are. That's the one end. So I'll do the exact same on the other end now. Okay, and there we are, all done. So you can see that's all nice and neat. Both sides are the exact same side. And also the good thing about this is that you can always interchange your pendant by just widening up this loop down here, sliding this out, and then you could thread on another pendant if you wanted to. Now I don't want to do that, of course, because I've just got this on here, and so I'm not going to take it off now. But that's just another thing that you can think about, is the fact that you can always interchange your pendants once you've bought one of these pieces, one of these necklaces. So let's say maybe you bought a set of tiger eye pendants and you liked each of them, and so you didn't know which one to put on. This is a good sort of necklace because you can just quickly interchange them as you want. So this one would look slightly different, this one would look slightly different, and so on and so on. So it's a nice necklace style because you can interchange your pendants as you wish. So that's basically it for this tutorial. I do hope that it was helpful to you, and if it was, please do let me know, as that is always helpful to me. And if you're watching this on Patreon, be sure to check all of the backlog underneath this video, as you'll be watching it on the $15 level, and so you'll be able to access all of the backlog that I've been posting over the previous months. So there should be a bunch of tutorials, colour recipes, tip tutorials, and all sorts of things down there for you to check it out. If you're watching this on Etsy, it's just this tutorial. So I do hope that it was helpful to you. If it was, please do let me know. And as always, I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.